Yes, like a pit bull in a donut shop. Let me get my volume here going. There's the green light. So we should be coming through. All right. I still hear another one. Okay. So last night we were finding out what the Bible had to say about our diet. And we found out that most of the Adventists are not following God's command to remove the fat and the blood. Because every Adventist I know that eats meat eats fat and blood. And when I question them on that, they get upset. Yes. Yeah. So anyway, I didn't say it. God did. So you take it up with him. Somebody asks, why did God give us the animals in the first place if we weren't supposed to eat them? Well, why did God give us the animals? What were they for? They were to serve us and to be our companions. When Adam named the cow, he didn't call him pot roast. When he named the pig, he didn't name him bacon. He had no intention of eating these animals. These are his friends. These are his servants. And if you go around eating your servants, you're not going to have any servants left. So God did not give them to us to be on the menu. It really ruins our economy and our planet by eating animals. 85% of the grain that we grow in this country goes to animals. Do you know what that means? Another child would never have to die if we kept giving them all that grain. But children are dying because chickens and pigs and cows and horses are getting grains. And 85% of the grains go to the animals. They don't go to humans. And then we're using a lot of water. It takes, to grow a pound of wheat is 25 gallons of water. To grow a pound of beef, it's 2,500 gallons. So 100 times that. And we're losing our topsoil every year because of that. And you know what happens when you lose the topsoil? We had it in this country. It was called the Dust Bowl. Nothing could grow because the ground was ruined. So we have to think of these consequences, and people are looking in all the wrong directions is where the problem is. And the problem is our diet. Yes. So now that we've understood better the meat, how the body was designed for complex carbohydrates, not for flesh. And now we need to talk about dairy products. The dairy people will tell you we've got so much calcium. It's good for you. The problem is, and they don't tell you is, the calcium that's in milk, we cannot absorb. It's called non-bioavailable. I can absorb my mother's milk, but I can't absorb a cow milk because it is a completely different formula. God designed it that way because you see, a newborn calf is going to weigh about 40 or 50 pounds at birth. And the first year of growth, it will be 10 times bigger, about 500 pounds. Human baby, 6 to 8 pounds at birth. Its first year of growth, it will only triple its birth weight. So unless you plan on your child weighing 500 pounds in 1 year, you need to give it the right formula. And it's not cow's milk. You should drink dog milk or cat milk, maybe rat milk. And everybody goes, oh. And I said, what's the difference? Animal, it's not your species. So you could do giraffe milk, you could do elephant milk. But But somehow they've taught us the cow one is okay to nurse on. Doesn't even look like you. Cow's milk has 3 times more sodium in it. It has 3 times more protein. It has 3 times more calcium. Why? Because it's got to make that 200-pound or 50-pound calf weigh 500 pounds. So it needs a big formula. Babies, no, it's not good for them. Now, if you're a baby doctor in the United States, you would have been very familiar with this next man, Dr. Oski. He's the former director of pediatrics at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine and the physician-in-chief, in other words, the #1 doctor at Johns Hopkins Children's Center. He's written over 19 medical textbooks dealing with hematology, which is what? Blood, and pediatrics, which is children. He's published over 290 medical manuscripts that are read around the world. And one of the booklets he's responsible for, Drink Your Milk. Now, why would the #1 physician at Children's Hospital at Johns Hopkins tell us not to drink milk? He's the #1 children's physician at Johns Hopkins. I'm going to read you just the closing sentences of this book. You'll understand why he wrote this book. Cow milk has no valid claim as the perfect food. So who told you milk was the perfect food? The Dairy Council, yes. As nutrition, milk produces allergies. Produces what? No, strong bones. No, allergies. It produces allergies, diarrhea, and cramps, and is a factor in the development of heart attacks and strokes. Perhaps when the public is educated, we have to be what? Educated, not propagandized by a business. Perhaps when the public is educated as to the hazards of milk, only calves will be left to drink their mother's milk. It's not yours. It's a calf. So, if you're going to substitute, there are a lot of products out there. A number of them put B12 in them because they realize you're not using dairy products, and so they add B12 to some of these milks. Make sure the sugar is less than 8%, because then you're having candy again. And the protein should be at least 4%. And that's a good, healthy one. You don't necessarily want these 99-cent ones because they're basically just colored water. There's not much to it. So you want to spend the extra dollar, get the $2 one, not the 99-cent one, because then you're going to get what you're paying for. People ask me, they say, well, no milk, where do you get your calcium? They're not asking that so much anymore because they're getting educated. But whenever they ask me, where do you get your calcium? I ask them, where does an elephant get his calcium? He doesn't drink milk. Giraffe, gorillas, rhinoceros, huge bones. Do they drink milk? Not at all. They get it from the plants. Now, if there's enough calcium for an elephant leg this big, do you think there's enough for these little tiny legs? No question. No question. So you can go to any library and get a food chart. Just ask the librarian, I want to see a food chart, and she'll show you over to the medical section, and you can get one of the books that shows you the different nutrition and the different foods. And calcium is everywhere. We are not calcium deficient. So if you've got enough food to eat and you're eating all the right colors, the different colors, you have your calcium automatically. You don't have to go looking for it. And the calcium that's, in fact, mustard greens, collard greens, turnip greens have twice the much calcium as cow's milk. And you can absorb it all. It's bioavailable to you. It's on a level that you can absorb it. But the cow milk, you're going to pass it. It's going right to the toilet because you're completely wrong formula for the human. Forget to tell you that. Oh, but we got lots of calcium. So, yes, they don't want you to buy. So anyway, it's very clear where you can get it. Now, if you're going vegan, you need to pay attention to your vitamin B12. Now, 4 sources of vitamin B12. You decide what you're most comfortable with. You can buy B12 tablets, but be sure you buy the ones that are sublingual, that go under the tongue. If it tells you to swallow this pill, that's no good because your digestive acids will destroy the B12. It's a very fragile, delicate vitamin. It has to go under your tongue and be dissolved and go slowly into the system. Then you'll get it. So if you're concerned, take some B12 tablets. They're not expensive. Put it under your tongue. Another source of B12, in the morning when you get up, that coating that's on your tongue, that was on you all night, it has B12 in it. So all you have to do is no toothpaste, just take your toothbrush and brush your tongue before you eat. And then after you eat, you can use toothpaste. But don't use toothpaste if you want this B12 to be alive when you brush and swallow. And people always go, oh, swallow. I said, man, you swallowed 20 times since you've been here. Our brain just gets so silly sometimes, brush it and swallow. Yeah, you're not using any kind of logic. The devil's just telling you something and you're repeating him, sounding just as silly as the devil. So another source of B12 is a lot of these soy products, the Big Franks and the Veggie Burger and the Garden Burgers and all that. They put B12 in there because they realize that you're not getting animal source B12. So they put it in your food that you're buying with the B12. Also in your descending colon, if you have a high fiber diet, you have receptors in the high part of the colon that will absorb B12. But you have to have a high fiber diet for that to work, which means you have to be eating plants, which is how God designed it. You eat plants, the receptors for the B12 are in your descending colon. They're not at the bottom. And if you have a hard meat eater stool, you're not going to get B12 out of that because it doesn't work. You see, these guys all work together. And so when they cooperate, if you do it right, but when you start messing up in one area, it's going to have effects in all the other areas as well. So, and then once a year, if you want just to have peace of mind, have a B12 test on your blood panel. You have to pay extra. They don't normally do a B12 test, but I throw it in there just for extra, test the B12 and also the vitamin D, because almost all North Americans are vitamin D deficient. And D is a critical vitamin because it's one of what they call the fat-soluble vitamins. A, E, D, and K are fat-soluble vitamins. The others are water-soluble. They wash out. But A, D, E, and K are critical, and they're fat-soluble, which means you can get too much of them, and that will create a problem. So if you keep taking all of these, too much vitamin D, you might run into problems. But it's also out there in the sun. And so I try to make sure whenever I leave Alaska, I go to a sunny spot. I've spent some winters in Florida and Hawaii and the Philippines. And this last one, I was in New Zealand, so that I can get some of that vitamin D. Right. Some of you have seen this food pyramid, and I need to talk to the people I'm staying with because they know how to fix these things up. This was an early one that they had. They have a vegan one now that's out, someone told me. So I'm going to get the vegan one. But this one here pretty much gives you the same principles. The biggest part of your diet, which is the bottom of the pyramid, are the fruits, nuts, grains, and vegetables. To work your way up, you should be eating less. You can see on the left-hand side, they want you to have dairy, which what they're looking for is calcium. And if you eat those calcium-rich foods, you're not going to have any problem for deficiency. On the right-hand side, it's the meat, the nuts, and the eggs. I agree with one of those. You only need a closed hand a day for the nuts. Ellen White said, king. So at least 6 or 8 of those should be almonds. The others you can rotate around. Walnuts are very important because they have the omegas in them. So I always have walnuts, and Sprouts was having a good price on walnuts not too long ago, and I bought 20 pounds of walnuts. Yeah, I'm not a squirrel, but I know they're really good for me. And they finally got them down when they were getting toward the end of the barrel to 99 cents a pound. But it's in the shell, you know. But 99 cents a pound for walnuts? Wow, I know. So I bought 10 more pounds. I may have to leave some of them down here till I come back next year. But anyway, I was real happy. God put those on sale for me. And the Brazil nuts were the same thing. They had them down to 99 cents. But those are hard to get out of the shell. That's a lot of work. You need one of those diggers to get them out. Sometimes they don't come out. I decided to boil them to see if that would be easier, and it was. If I boiled them, and that loosened them up a little bit so I could pop them out of those shells a lot easier. But yeah, you can put in, I don't eat generally cashews because I use the cashews for all of my sauces and my gravies and my cheeses. So I cook with my cashews. I don't eat them generally. And so the cashews were on special too. They were $2.99 a pound, which is very cheap for cashews. So I bought 5 pounds of those. The Lord's got everything just on sale for me because he knows I'm not going to be here long, so we can't play around with this. Get those Brazil nuts on sale, those walnuts on sale, get those cashews on sale. Because in Alaska, those are really expensive. So, all right. If you put any bean and grain together, you get all 22 amino acids that the body needs. They haven't found any more, have they? Is 22 still the top? Okay, because I know for a while we were saying it didn't. Now they said, oh, there's 22 now. I just didn't know if they found another one. Yeah, okay. But any bean with any grain, all right? Now, the two most nutritious beans are the soybeans and the garbanzo beans. They call it another name in another part of the country. Garbanzo, chickpeas, that's it, yes. I don't know why they had to change names, but anyhow, they did. But those are the two most nutritious. They also take the longest to cook. And anyway, but any bean with any grain, just mix them up. Eat a variety. You should eat a variety during the week, but not at one meal. Okay? So like one morning you have oats, and you should try wheat berries the next day. And then you should try something else the next to keep a good variety, because all of them have their strong and low points. They're not all exactly the same. So I know some people, I only have this for breakfast. And I said, no, you need to mix it up a little bit here, so that you get every. God didn't put all of these different kinds of grains here just to stay busy. No, you need something from all the different ones. So enjoy that variety and the nutrition that it provides. Organic, of course, is usually the safest and the best. If I can't get organic, because it's sometimes a little expensive, I at least like to get non-GMO. I don't want it to be genetically modified. So I look for that little blue sticker that says non-GMO. And then the rest of it I'm a little leery of. Obviously, fresh is the most nutritious. Frozen is the next most nutritious. And then canned is the last. Doesn't mean there's nothing in the canned, but it's just a little lower. So keep that in mind. I try not to eat as much canned foods as possible, but sometimes when tomatoes are a crazy price, I buy the canned tomatoes that are a lower price, or I'll buy the pineapple canned in its own juice because the fresh is getting too a little pricey there. So just try to avoid reading food. God didn't avoid labels. God didn't put any labels on his food. He didn't have to. It's all safe. It's all good in moderation. 10 bananas for breakfast isn't good for you. All right. You need to throw in a few grapes and some oranges. One of the best fruits, obviously, is the apple. Apple is very important. You should have those regularly in your diet. And there's lots of kinds. Is there 200 kinds of apples? I can only name you a dozen. But there's like 200 kinds of apples. Yeah, and then huh? I don't eat seeds. Yeah, that's how women get pregnant, right? Don't eat those apple seeds, you'll get pregnant. Start growing more. You know, when I found out that women had babies, I asked my mother, the nurse, I said, men never have babies, do they? She goes, no. I said, never, never, ever, not even by accident? She goes, no, men never have babies. I said, oh man, I don't want something growing inside of me for 9 months. I said, I don't want that. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's what it was. So leave the watermelon seeds alone. That's the counsel you got there. All right, we want to try to stay away from vinegar. And the devil has it. I don't think an American goes through a day without vinegar. It's in the salad dressing. It's in the ketchup. It's in the mayonnaise. It's just, and I know they've got this new one that's a vegan mayonnaise, and they have about 4 different kinds. Vegenaise, and I've read all 4 labels. All 4 of them have mustard and vinegar in it. These are not to go inside your body. When vinegar goes in your body, it will destroy the vitamin C. Plus, the critical thing is it strips that mucus lining in your digestive tract. It makes the foods move through smoother, but the vinegar will erode it away. So I know people say, oh, apple cider vinegar. I don't care if it's rice vinegar or apple cider vinegar. Once you say vinegar, it's fermented. We're not supposed to eat fermented foods. We're supposed to eat rich, healthy foods that are fresh, not fermented. So when wine goes bad, that's what it turns to, is vinegar. It's the next fermentation after alcohol is vinegar. That's what they offered Jesus on the cross, and he refused it. So it was vinegar mixed with a pain-relieving potion that they had, but he wasn't going to cloud his mind at all in those last few moments. Be careful about spices. And I know when I'm in Arizona, you guys sleep in spices. So if it's going to burn the tongue, it's going to burn the tummy. It doesn't stop burning just because you swallow. It keeps burning and irritating your digestive tract. Those fiber optic cameras that they can drop down and they can look around like a periscope, they can see the blood vessels bleed and burst because of the irritants that you put inside there. So try to stay away from the irritating spices. That's why if I go to a Mexican or a Thai restaurant, I don't. Because they say, oh no, this is really mild. And I said, oh, you mean smoke doesn't come out. But it's still irritating. And so I just don't eat it because mild to them is irritating to me because my taste buds have really refined. And so I'm very sensitive to this because I've gotten away from that. Just like if I was to drink a beer, I know it would taste awful because I've lost my taste for it. I never really had a taste for beer anyway. But anyway, my taste buds have stepped away from that. So instead of using vinegar, whenever I prepare a food that calls for vinegar, I use lemon or lime or pineapple juice or a combination of all 3 of them just to mix it up. I like a variety. So lemon, lime, and pineapple juice are good substitutes for your vinegar, and you're not going to do any harm to your system. I was in Canada and I saw this store. Can you believe truth in advertising? Death by chocolate. I was standing outside there, that's me, saying, please read the sign, please read the sign. What word do you see in the middle of the word death? Eat. There it is, eat. What's the last 3 letters of chocolate? Eight. God says, can I make it any plainer? Yes. So try to avoid those things. 19 poisons in chocolate. Theobromine, which goes directly to your nervous system, not to mention the caffeine. Now, it is a different kind of caffeine than the coffee caffeine, but it is nonetheless a caffeine. A general rule is anything that ends in I-N-E, you should not consume. Turpentine, gasoline, yeah, caffeine, purine. You know what purine is? That's the urine waste that's in meat. It's called purine. Yeah, we say urine. Yeah, don't consume it. So those are kind of easy ways of following that. But I thought that was interesting. Canadian store. Those Canadians. Now, sugar. By the way, I speak Canadian, eh? So if you ever go to Canada, I'll be your translator, eh? We won't have any confusion there, eh? So, sugar. By the way, you have new taste buds that surface every 30 days. The taste buds that are at the top right now, they'll be gone in 30 days because the new ones come to surface. So if you can hold on away from some foods for 30 days, you'll have some very clean, healthy taste buds to enjoy the explosion of flavor in God's food. Your taste buds are like a key. They will unlock the flavor of the food. But if those keys are bent because you've been consuming so much chocolate, cheese, grease, and spice, you don't taste the food anymore. That's why people have to put stuff on top of their food all the time. They can't just eat a piece of celery. They need to put some cheese in there or some peanut butter or some deviled eggs or something in there because they can't eat celery. Why? Because it says that it doesn't have any taste. That's because your taste buds are shot. There's a lot of taste there. You just don't know it anymore. So give it 30 days to get those new buds up there, and you will be amazed at the explosion of flavor that's in food because it's there. You don't have to put ranch dressing on there. You need to just enjoy the vegetables. Sometimes I make my own salad dressing on a Sunday, but it's nothing harsh. In the blender, I'll put tomatoes, tofu, avocados, onion and garlic, sweet basil, oregano, whatever. And next week, it's a completely different one. But I fill that blender on Sunday morning, and then I have all week to use it in my salads. It's great. Easy thing to do. If you say, oh, it's so time consuming. Not if you're smart about it. I don't make my salad dressing every day. I make it Sunday morning. There it is. All done. So, new taste buds. Let them come to the surface. Don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry. Yeah, Alpo looks good when you're hungry. All right. So that's a brand of dog food, just in case you don't know. So don't go shopping hungry. When I was new, I used to have to be very diligent. As soon as I pulled into the parking lot, I bowed my head on the steering wheel and I prayed, Lord, don't let me buy anything right now that I would be ashamed to give to you if you were to come to my house tonight. And that really helps. And then when I grabbed my cart, I put my guardian angel in the cart. Said, you stay right there till we get out of here. And as long as he's in there, and I try to put something in there, and there's a little tug of war, I put it back on the shelf. So that was my growing process of learning how to do these things. But it'll take some time. And if you make a mistake and suddenly binge on potato chips or eating 10 cookies instead of just 1 or 2, don't beat yourself up, all right? It happened, let it go. Satan is going to constantly torment you about that, and that's not who you are. Remember, I told you on the potato chip story on the opening night that just because you do something, that few moments isn't who you are. That's not your whole life. That's just a bad moment. So, anyway, sugar. There's basically 2 kinds of sugar you're going to use. You're going to use the natural sugar that's in God's food called a fructose monosaccharide sugar. It's in apples and grapes, carrots, oranges. And then there's the sucrose disaccharide. Now, the disaccharide is the white sugar that you see. You take 6 feet of sugar cane and you bring it down to a spoonful of sugar. This is now labeled pharmacologically as a drug because it's so concentrated. What do you think drugs are? They're concentrated plants. Where do you think they got them from? Plants. And they concentrate it so much that they have side effects. Well, white sugar is a concentrated drug. You ask any pharmacist, what is white sugar? And they'll tell you it's a drug. It's not listed as a food. It's a drug. And because it's a drug, it's going to have side effects. All drugs have side effects. You need to make sure you're not using that drug and experiencing the side effects, because it'll keep your immune system compromised and it will do a lot of other things in the body that aren't good for it. So the white sugar that we find in soda pop and cakes and candies and donuts and stuff, sucrose disaccharide sugar, when you eat that donut or whatever, you're going to get a spike. And that's when it goes up. And that's what you like because it is a drug high. Did you hear what I said? It is a drug high because it's acting like a drug in your body. It's not acting like food. You eat an apple, it's not going to do that. But when you drink a Coca-Cola or when you eat a donut, boom, it's going to spike. And that's why you feel so happy when you have that cake or that candy bar because, oh, you're loaded, man. You're high. Yeah. But that burns very quickly. It doesn't last very long. And what goes up must go down. And when it goes down, it drops you back lower than where you were at normal. And then your body has to crawl back up to get to normal. This is called spiking. The body doesn't like this. The body wants everything to stay copacetic. It wants your breathing rate the same. It wants your circulation the same. It wants everything to stay level. But when you eat junk food, things are not level. And it really, really upsets the body and the brain because what's going on inside it wasn't designed for. So the natural sugar that's like in the apples and the oranges and so on, because it's in fiber, it's not refined, is it? It's in fiber. So what's going to happen? It's going to absorb slower because the body has to break in through that fiber and break it down. And so you don't get a big spike. You get what I call a happy bump. And it's just that little bump that you feel when you eat a banana or eat some grapes. Makes you feel good because you got a little happy bump. All right? But that's okay. God wanted us to enjoy that. But he didn't want us to do the spiking business that we do with the food that God did not intend for us to eat. All right? You got to be careful at potlucks. And this is always a challenge for me because gets a little embarrassing, because I'll see something with a sauce on it. I don't know what it is. So I would just rather not eat it. So I just have to pass by. And there's been some churches that I almost had nothing to eat because everything was covered with chocolate, cheese, grease, and spice. And so I'd look at that and just, I try to get somebody who's working the thing saying, do you know which stuff here is safe, that's no meat or no dairy, and so, well, you can have some bread and some salad. That's about it. I was getting ready to have some salad not too long ago at a potluck. Sure enough, just before the line started, this woman opened up a bottle of ranch and she poured it over the whole salad. That took care of my salad. No salad. Yeah, so things got pretty slim. And sometimes I'll leave stuff out in my car. And I'll go and finish my meal at the car rather than, because what people don't realize is when your body gets clean, it doesn't tolerate any disturbances. And I can get sick for 2 or 3 days, which you eat all the time. I remember in college, Sunday night, the cafeteria was closed. You had to get the food that you wanted for Sunday evening. And a lot of the guys in the dormitory would go to the Dairy Queen or someplace like that on Sunday night. That was their big treat. And when they asked me to go, and I said, look, if I went with Dairy Queen with you guys, I would be in a coma for 3 or 4 days. And they said, well, if you're so healthy, why can't you eat this when we eat it every week? And I thought, wow, that's a little trick question, isn't it? So the next day I asked one of my professors, I said, now, what's the deal here? They can go to Dairy Queen and they're still okay. If I go to Dairy Queen, I'm going to be sick. And he said, Paul, it's very simple. Your body is running at 90%. It's really up there. Their body's at best 50 or 60%. They're only about halfway there. So you all go to Dairy Queen and it drops down to 50. They've only lost 5 or 10 drops. You've lost 40. You're going to feel it. They're not, because they're half zombie already. So when they get toasted by the ice cream, they're going, I feel about just about the same. I'm going, whoa, man, what happened? Yeah, because my body is a Rolls Royce and theirs is a beat up Volkswagen. Okay. So I told him that story the next day. I said, you guys want to be a Rolls Royce? Quit going to Dairy Queen. you're going to be a beat up VW. Yeah. One of the things that will help you, and I do it every week, is fasting. I fast 24 hours, 1 day a week, only water for 24 hours. My normal eating schedule is 9 in the morning and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So on Sabbath, I just don't eat breakfast. And I don't eat again until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This is why potluck always messes me up, because my body's not used to eating at noon. But anyway, at 4 o'clock is when I eat. And that way I've got a 24-hour fast where my mind is in complete control over the body because there's no food to process. And the body learns to obey, to comply to your decision. So there's not that much of a struggle. So what we want to do is practice fasting. Now we're told that eating 2 meals a day is already a type of fast because you're not eating 3. And I know there are doctors who say, oh, you should have 4 or 5 little meals a day. Well, they don't know anything about physiology because that means your stomach is working all day long with 4 or 5 meals. Never gets a chance to rest. The stomach muscle has to rest. Every muscle has to rest. That includes the stomach muscle. As soon as you say muscle, you need to think has to rest. You know, your heart actually rests between love and dub and love. It takes a rest. Love and dub and love and dub. It rests because if it ran continuously, it'll fatigue out. It won't last long. So if I asked you to jump rope 1,000 times, you might have a difficult time doing that. But if I gave you a week to do 100 a day, you got a chance because your leg muscles get to what? Rest. That's it. So the stomach muscle has to rest. And fasting provides that. Now, if you're hypoglycemic or diabetic, you may have to take some other precautions. But on your fasting, if you've never done it before, you have to be careful because you can get sick. Because when you're not bringing in any food, the body starts lifting up the carpet and cleaning underneath here. And you can get sick. So I recommend people, when you choose to do a fast, first thing you need to do is up your water to 12 to 15 glasses a day. So you've got plenty of fluid to flush the garbage that's getting loose. And the first kind of fast you can try is just eat fruit for 1 day. Not all day long, but at mealtime. Go on a fruit fast, all right? This fruit goes through faster. Your body has more time and energy now to do what? Clean, scrubby-dub, yeah. And if that's been successful, you didn't get sick, you may try a juice fast where you're not eating any solids. Now you're just having liquids. So the body has more time now to clean house because it's not processing and eliminating food. Ultimately, you would like to get to where you're having just or fast. So now the body can put all of its attention on cleaning house. So try that once a week and see what happens. If at any time you start feeling sick, eat something immediately. It'll stop it. The fast will stop and they'll start processing food. So it's a good practice to have. You can do it once a week, which I do automatically. And because of my schedule, I really only have to skip 1 meal to fast 24 hours. I just skip breakfast on Saturday morning. Sometimes I'll have a smoothie if I have a long day. Like this Sabbath, I know I was going to be speaking 4 times. I'm going to need a little extra energy here. So I made a big smoothie in the morning to carry me through. And then I brought my food for 4 o'clock. Because my lecture was at 2 o'clock. Well, if I don't finish lunch, it doesn't even start till 12:30 or so, and I'm not done till after 1, I've got to talk within an hour after I've eaten. It's not a good combination. You can ask the singers the same thing. They don't go singing after they eat because that requires energy to go somewhere else other than the digestive process. So you don't want to try to do both of them. You should never do any kind of studying after you eat. You should wait at least an hour. Same thing with athletics. You should never do anything physically demanding. You know, in the swimming pool or in the lakes, the drowning time is 11 to 2 because that's when people eat their picnic lunch. And then they get out into the water and the muscle says, oh, I need to swim here. Body says, too bad. Everything is right here getting this food processed. And so it gets half and half. And this is why the students at 1 o'clock is the worst class to teach in high school or university, because they're going like this, because the brain isn't getting enough oxygen to study and focus, because it has to be down here to process the food. So you can't run both of them at the same time. You'll not get efficiency out of either one of them. So don't compromise yourself like that. When I was in Europe, I was doing a number of churches in Slovenia, the former Yugoslavia. And this one pastor's wife was really nervous that he was next on the list, because she wanted to really please me. And, you know, what do I make for Paul? I don't know how to cook for him. He's a vegan. I don't know how to cook for a vegan. And he said, well, call the other pastor's wife. Ask them what they gave him. And so they called him up. They said, don't make anything fancy. Just give him simple stuff. He loves salad every day. He loves fresh fruit. He likes bread. He likes granola. Just keep it simple. Don't make anything fancy. He's liable not to eat it. And so I got there, and after about 2 or 3 days, the husband told me, he asked her, well, what's it like cooking for Paul? And she said, wow, he's the easiest person in the world. And he said, didn't the other wives tell you that? She said, yeah, but I was really nervous. And he goes, so it's easy? She goes, oh yeah, with Paul, you just wash it and throw it at him. That's what I want. One time I was with the conference president because he wanted to travel with me to learn my lifestyle because he thought it was good. So this conference president in Romania, the Romanian conference president, said, I'm going to exercise with you every day. I'm going to eat with you every day. I'm going to do everything that you do while we're traveling. And I said, sure, that's fine. Well, the exercise didn't quite work out. He couldn't quite make it. He would go about half the time and then wait till I came back from running, and we would pick up again. But we were staying at this wealthy family's home, and because she had the conference president and an American in her house, she wanted to put on the show, you know. And but he warned her. He said, you know, if it's too fussy, Paul's not going to eat it because he doesn't know what's in it. And if he doesn't know what's in it, he'll ask for a slice of bread or just some boiled beans or some boiled potatoes, and he's happy. So anyway, she actually went to a bakery in their town and bought these very fancy desserts, you know. And of course, first time she brought them all out, I took one look, you know, and he looked at me and he goes, and I said, go ahead. He goes, you're not going to eat it, are you? I said, you can have mine. He goes, nope, you're not going to eat it. I'm not going to eat it. So when she came up, she goes, you guys didn't eat your dessert. He said, well, you know, Paul doesn't eat chocolate and Paul doesn't eat ice cream. And she tried several times to bring us a real that we couldn't resist, you know. I resisted. And Pastor wept. I mean, the conference president. He just went, please, can we just taste it? I go, help yourself. He goes, no, you're not going to do it. I'm not going to do it, but I'm not happy about this. She finally gave up. She realized they were going to have to eat it. I wasn't going to touch it. And so the conference president was trying to explain that to her. So you have some interesting exchanges. Sometimes when I'm at a house, they like to put on the real fancy meal, you know, and I always know the dessert's going to be deadly. There's no question. They're not going to bring out a bowl of grapes or strawberries or something like that. They're going to bring out some kind of flaming cake or something like that. So what I do is I look at something at the table that I like the best, like maybe there's some Brussels sprouts or some, you know, asparagus or something like that. And she says, okay, it's time for dessert. Let me clean off the plates. I said, listen, I like that asparagus so much. Do you mind if I keep my plate and I could have that for dessert? And of course, everybody goes, what's that matter for you? She goes, no, if you want some asparagus, go ahead. So I try to be wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. Yes. Anyway, it can be a challenge. So people ask, well, can you really be healthy if you just go plant-based? Well, the answer is there is no question. You look into the Guinness World Book of Records, you look at the Olympic athletes, you'll see over and over again, they're closet vegetarians. I think I mentioned this already. Arnold Schwarzenegger put together a video called Game Changers. And this Game Changers, he's interviewing all of these Olympians that we didn't know were vegetarians. Now, some of the language is a little colorful, so I have to get one that's got edited bleep bleep, you know. I should get my guys who I'm with right now to make one for me, because they probably know how to do it. Anyway, when we're looking at some of the athletes, it's really quite surprising, and people aren't aware of. This man named Sixto Linares, he was a double Ironman gold medalist. He swam 4.8 miles, bicycled 185 miles, ran 53 miles. Plants. He was a vegetarian. The guy at the bottom, Paavo Nurmi, he's a Norwegian. 12 Olympic medals, the first man in Olympic history to get 12 medals. And 9 of them were gold. And he could run the 1 mile, the 5,000, and the 10,000. He was known as the Flying Finn. Did I say he was from Norway? He's from Finland. Because he called him the Flying Finn, because this guy could just run like crazy. Bill Pearl, I actually stopped by his house. He lives outside of Oregon. I stopped by to talk to him one time, and he was gone lecturing someplace, so I missed him. But he's 4 times Mr. Universe. Obviously, this guy needs some eat because he's wasting away, isn't he? Yeah. Marine Captain Adams, he's all over the Guinness World Book of Records as a vegetarian. He jumped rope 43,000 times in 5 hours, lifted a 75-pound barbell 1,600 times in 19 hours, swam 68 miles nonstop, did 51,000 sit-ups in 76 hours, eating plants. So I think there's enough there for you to do what you need to do. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger about his movie Game Changer, and he too is vegetarian. I'm not sure if he's vegan yet. How many of you have heard of the Ironman competition held once in Hawaii? It's on the Big Island. I've actually been to the hotel where it starts, and I took a picture of it. It wasn't during the Ironman, but I wanted to get the starting place. But you have to bicycle, swim, and run all day long. Scott was the first one to win Ironman 6 times, and they kept asking him, how do you do this? Nobody else has done this. And he said, I'm a vegetarian. And they just couldn't get it in their head. But Mark Allen was paying attention. And Dave Scott can get it 6 times as a vegetarian. And so guess who the second man to win Ironman 6 times? Mark Allen. And that's the 2 of them running together in the Ironman competition. Ironmans are the only ones who have won Ironman 6 times. Pretty impressive. Well, I was lecturing in Oregon, and somebody told me about your games. And I said, what's that? They said, it's just like the Olympics, except you have to be 50 years or older to participate. And I said, really? I said, well, I'd never heard of this. And I was 52, so I thought I will go check it out, see what they're doing. Maybe they'd like a lecture or something like that. And I figured, you know, there'd be a couple of 100 athletes there and a dozen or so countries represented. But when I got there, I was in for a big surprise. You could see the crowd. There were 25,000 spectators in the stadium to cheer on their favorite countries, their favorite athletes. And that's me with the royal court of the senior games. And there were marching bands there. There were celebrities there, entertainers from the Hollywood over 50 to come and see the athletes that are their age. And some of these, by the way, were Olympians when they were in their 20s. And now they've come back in their 50s to get some more medals. So it was really interesting. Joe Namath was there. Helen Reddy, I remember, was there. I don't know who all else was there. But observing and watching before the games began a couple of days ahead of time, because the athletes were getting acclimated and, you know, rehearsing and practicing. And I would follow them in the cafeteria, and I saw what they were eating. They were eating whatever didn't eat them. I know what's going on inside their body. Those red blood cells, oxygen, they're not carrying oxygen. You know why? They're stuck together. These guys are eating pancakes, sausage, dead animals, fried foods, red blood cells sticking together, which means you can have up to a 20% drop in your oxygen. It's impossible for your muscles to perform at maximum capacity when you have a 20% drop in your oxygen. So I thought, you know what? I think I can whoop these guys because they're full of sausage and pancakes. So I went to register, and they said, registration's closed. I said, no, you can do late registration. She says, that's an extra $150 plus your registration fee. And I said, yeah, I know. And she said, are you trained? Do you have all your equipment? And I said, no, but I don't eat pancakes and sausage. And she said, well, all you're going to do is get disqualified. You can't possibly beat these guys. These guys train all year for this event. And I said, well, I can beat pancakes and sausage. So I registered, and this is the Parade of Nations. There were over 40 different countries represented at this games, 1,400 athletes from all over the world. And so the Parade of Nations, we go into this dugout, and then we line up alphabetically. So the United States is, way at the end there before Zimbabwe or somewhere. So all the Americans get together, and they said, hey, Mr. Volk, you're the new guy. Why don't you carry the flag for us since this is your first time? And I said, really? I thought, wow, what an honor. I get to carry the American flag. So we were all lined up underneath the bleachers, the stadium, and they were all coming out alphabetically, starting with Argentina or someplace, and people would jump and cheer for their different countries and so on. And then finally we were getting up toward the top of the dugout, ready to hit the track. And then you hear that microphone man said, ladies and gentlemen, the United States of America. And the crowd went hysterical because they saw all their American boys coming out, And there I was carrying the flag, front person there, and I heard 43,000 people screaming, and I froze. I never heard 43,000 people screaming. So they were piling up behind me. They said, Paul, get going. Oh, sorry, So I kept going. We carried the flag all the way around the stadium. And then we were all broken up into our different areas for track and field and for different events. And of course, I was in the running one. And that's actually me. I had a buddy of mine who was with me, and he was taking pictures. And does this have a pointer? Okay. Well, anyway, in that long line in the middle, there's somebody in red. That's me. That's me. So I was lined up, and those guys were looking at my tennis shoes. They were street tennis shoes. They weren't these $500 flashing light, jet propelled, shoes that these guys had. And they kind of looked at me like, and I got to thinking, yeah, you guys just get a good look at this, because that's all you're going to see when that gun goes off, because your pancakes and sausage are going to be back there. So I entered 2 races. This was one of the races that I entered. I was number 159. I entered the 500-meter race. And in both races, and the judges could not believe it. You walked in off the street, and you're number 2 in the world. How did you do that? I said, I'm a vegan. And they said, uh-huh. How'd you do it? Said, well, listen, meathead, and I'll explain it to you. And they said, if you train and come back, you're going to take away all of our gold medals. And I said, I don't have to come back anymore, because I showed you a vegan can walk in off the street and be number 2. The same guy from New York beat me. Same guy. What I should have asked him, and I regret that I didn't do it, and I might be able to look it up, because they do have all the records there. They're all permanent. And find out if he was an Olympic runner when he was in his 20s. Because that would be more interesting to know that I had beaten a former Olympic athlete at the senior games. But anyway, while I was in this race, I told the Lord, I said, if you will let me have a medal, I will use that to get into the universities and the high schools. And the Lord said, all right, I'm not going to let you get gold, so you'll get proud, but I'll give you number 2, silver. And so when I call schools now, I don't like to call principal or the president of the university. I call the football coach and the basketball coach. And as soon as I tell them I'm a silver medalist, the next thing they say is, when can you get here? Yes. And then I talk to them about drugs and alcohol and other things that they're not supposed to be involved in. So anyway, that was a real blessing. And it was a real opportunity for me to be able to participate. Now, when the games are all over, in fact, even before the games, they have this big gymnasium that they use. And at different stages along the walls and down the center of the aisles, they had testing stations for glaucoma, for bone density, for diabetes, for high blood pressure, because these are all seniors. So they have all these testing stations so you can find out how you're doing, if you're okay. And so athletes are allowed to take all of the tests for free. And so I was going to all the different booths to take the different tests for my bone density and everything else. And they had a new station there that was first time that year. And what it was called a bioscan, and it's to test your immune system. The machine looks just like this. And you put your hand in front of the lens, and a blue laser light goes into your skin, and it gathers data from your skin. This is more accurate than a blood test, because a blood test is only going to know what you've been doing the last 24 hours. This is 6 months of information. So they gather the data from the skin. It costs $7 million to develop this machine. And when they get the data from the blade, you can't feel the laser light at all. I watched several people ahead of me to see if they jumped or anything, but no, just like putting in front of a light bulb, just flashlight, nothing. So I put my hand there, gathered the data, and you can see here on the scores, if you score under 10,000, you are anemic immediately. If you scored 10 to 17,000, marginal. You're just barely getting by. If you score 17 to 25,000, you're average. You know what average means? You're going to get 3 or 4 colds, viruses, and flus throughout the year because you're average. But if you score over 25,000, you're good to go. Congratulations. I said, what was my score? They said, your score was 34,000, almost 10,000 above their maximum. And I said, wow. And they said, yeah, we got to ask you a question now because of that score. I said, what do you want to know? They said, are you a vegetarian? I said, why would you think to ask me a question like that? And they said, because we've already given this test to thousands of people, and only the vegetarians can break the 25,000 barrier. I said, well, you just found another one. They said, wow. So several years later, I was lecturing in Los Angeles, and the people I was staying with had one of these machines. And no, it didn't cost $7 million to buy one. So anyway, they bought one. They use these machines to get people to buy their pills because they'll show them you're anemic, you need to get this, and you need to take this, and so on. So it's a business. We have one of these machines from the senior games. Have you done anything different since you took the other one? And I said, well, I'm eating a lot more organic now, and my diet is over half raw. And they said, you want to take it again to see if it's helping? I said, well, sure, let's find out if it's getting any better. So this is the new paper that they print out now. It's full color, very fancy, because this really caught on. It became a big business. And if you score in the red zone, you're anemic. But if you're down here in the blue zone, then, and I said, well, how did I score? And they said, well, we're not really sure. And I said, why not? And they said, because the machine only goes up to 59,000 and you went off the chart. Your immune system is so high, we can't measure it. So that means when the mosquitoes take my blood, they can beat up the wasps and the hornets. I'm telling you this not because I'm special. I showed you those silver medals not because I'm special. The program really works. If it didn't, I wouldn't do it. But it works. It gives me the results I'm looking for. And I was most interested in my immune system because in the time of trouble, I'm going to be one of those healthy people who are helping people in need. But if I'm sick, I'm part of the problem. I'm not part of the solution. And so I want to be at my maximum capacity when people have the greatest needs during that time of trouble, I want to be there for them. So I was so happy to get that. And I was lecturing in the Loma Linda area, and this fluffy doctor didn't particularly like my presentation. Give me 1 minute in his refrigerator, and I can tell you why he didn't like my presentation. Because it was loaded. So anyway, he said, Paul, I would like to do some blood panels on you. And I said, what for? Well, just to make sure you're okay. He did it because he wanted to find something wrong. He took 3 blood samples. I said, why are you taking 3 for 1 blood panel? He said, I'm going to send the other 2 to 2 other different companies who do other testings than what I do. So in other words, he was determined to find a defect in me with these blood tests. So he got the blood panels back, told me to come and pick them up. And I said, well, how did I do? And you can see there, when they give you a blood panel, they don't want you too high in anything, and they don't want you too low in anything. And you can see on my blood panel, there's only 1 word and the whole length. What is it? Normal. I'm not too high in anything, and I'm not too low in anything. It's a perfect score. Straight A+. And he looked at that, and I said, this vegan stuff must work out pretty good, huh? He goes, yeah, whatever. He wasn't too happy. And I said, now, let's talk about your 250 pounds. Because yours is obvious. I don't have to have a blood panel. Anybody can look at you. It's unfortunate, but that's what happens. So, they wanted to do some testing on the SAD diet. Do you know what the SAD diet is? Standard American Diet. Yes. They got a good name for it, didn't they? SAD. So what they wanted to do is find out in the laboratory how it reacted to animals. And so they took a giant cage and they filled it full of hundreds of test rats. And at one end of the cage was a beaker that had water with 10% alcohol added to it. At the other end of the cage was only pure water. When they released these hundreds of rats in this giant cage, as soon as they tasted the water with alcohol in it, they didn't touch it again. They would only drink the pure water. And the experiment began. They removed rat chow, and they gave them ground up the standard American diet. And this is what they ground up into pellets. You'll recognize this food. It's in most every American home. Hot dog with mustard and pickle relish. And you know there's a lot of stimulation in that right there, because there's vinegar in the mustard. The mustard is an irritant. Pickles have vinegar in them. The hot dog has who knows what in it. Then they had French bread, green beans, chopped salad. They had to give them some greens or they would have died right away and the experiment would have been over. And chocolate cake, coffee, candy bars, and cookies. Ground it up, gave it to the test rats. And on a diet, which is low in nutrition, but high in stimulation, in a short period of time, all of the rats would only drink the alcohol. They didn't want water anymore, because you see, the diet was starting to stimulate them. And when you eat a stimulating diet, you want more stimulation and you want stronger stimulation. That's why Ellen White says many parents have prepared their children to be drunkards at the dinner table. That's an exact quote. Many parents have prepared their children to be drunkards at the dinner table because the food that they gave their children was full of excitotoxins. And once you push that button in the brain, it goes, yeah, I want more. I need stronger. So they decided to take the experiment a step further. They removed the standard American diet, gave them their normal laboratory rat chow, and in a short period of time, almost all of the rats went back to drinking only water. However, a number of them didn't make it back. They died of cirrhosis of the liver, alcoholism. And you see with humans, the numbers are worse because nobody takes away our alcohol. And we keep eating this stimulating diet, and we wonder why our kids are violent and aggressive, why they're sexually active, why they're experimenting with drugs and tobacco. It's because we've pushed the stimulation button, and it's revved up, and it wants more, and it wants stronger. There's a reason why they're behaving this way. And we can prove it in the laboratory. So that's why I talk to them about these things in their schools. I know when I went to my high school, even at the 10-year reunion, already some of our classmates were dead. I can tell you that every one of my classmates who used marijuana did not stop at marijuana. That is the gateway drug, and it took them into other areas. Some of them didn't make it back. They ended up in prison, they ended up in a mental institution, or they died because they were putting stuff in this body that God did not design to go inside. And when you do that, Satan has full run in you and over you. So we don't want to fall into that trap. Well, some people hear all this information and they say, well, Paul, I'm just not convicted that I have to be to bed by 9 or 9:30. I'm not convicted I got to drink 8 glasses to 10 glasses of water a day. And I said, that's okay. When I heard some of this stuff, I wasn't convicted on it either because I was trained by a nurse, my mother. So I wasn't convicted. I said, you guys can't be right. My mother can't. How could my mother be wrong? She's trained. She knows this stuff. She graduated summa cum laude from Denver Nursing School. She's a smart woman. But she was trained and studying the books that were wrong. So it doesn't matter how much you can repeat and get an A, it's wrong material. It's not the right material. Anyway, if you're not convicted on something, I'll say, I'll allow you to have that. I had the same issues until I studied more, show myself approved unto God. So I said, if you tell me you're not convicted, before I let you walk away, hiding under, I'm not convicted, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. First question I'm going to ask you is, do you pray about this? Well, no, I don't want to pray about it because if I pray about it, I may have to change, and I don't want to change. Well, listen, do you study about it? Get the facts, get all the information. Well, if I study and I learn what's true, I may have to change, and I don't want to. This side over here, you're not paying attention. I'm cueing you. That was your turn. I don't want to study. Well, listen, do you talk to other people about this on both sides of the issue? Don't go to Victoria's Secret to find out what your wife should be wearing. All right? You got to talk to people on both sides of the issue. I have personally talked to several federal meat inspectors, myself, face to face. Every federal meat inspector, not state inspector, federal. Every federal meat inspector I have talked to is a vegetarian. You know why? They said, we know what gets FDA approved, and we will not eat it. It's not fit to eat. But the FDA is saying this is fit for human consumption. They said, do you know what a cow has to be, what condition it has to be when it arrives at the stockyard? When that train pulls in, they put a 40-foot ramp on the side, and they walk down that ramp. The inspectors are there. If that cow is alive when the door is open, and when they walk down that ramp, if all 4 hooves touch the dirt, it can fall over dead after that. It can be great pus pouring down the side of his neck. But if all 4 hooves hit the dirt, it is fit for human consumption. Believe me, you would have a fit if you knew what you were consuming. Yes. So they said what they do, big ladle, and they and tumors that they see, and then they process. Now, if you know anything about that, the whole system, it's just metastasized in a certain area. But the whole system is But they tell me they don't have meat in their house. They don't allow their children to eat meat. If you want to eat meat, you can go to McDonald's. Do not bring it home. No meat is allowed in this house. These are federal meat inspectors. What does that tell you? I like what Paul McCartney said. You know who Paul McCartney was of the Beatles? Yes. His wife, Linda, the previous one, she was a vegetarian. And they actually had a business of frozen vegetarian meals so people could make the transition. And Paul McCartney said, if slaughterhouses were all made of glass and you could see everything that's going on from when that cow arrives, everyone would be a vegetarian if it was a glass slaughterhouse. And I can tell you from my own experience, I know what it's like driving past an orchard, and I know what it smells like driving past a slaughterhouse. I'll take the orchard anytime. That smells wonderful, not the slaughterhouse. So, you don't want to pray about it. You don't want to study and learn the truth. You don't want to talk to anybody about it. Your problem is that you're not convicted. Your problem is you're not converted. That's the issue. Because you see, a converted person is going to pray about everything they do. They're going to study, show themselves approved unto God, a man rightly dividing the word of truth. And they're not afraid to talk to anybody. And I'm not. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody. Muslims, I will talk to them. In fact, some Mormons just sent me a notice, asked me if I'd come to church with them this Sunday, today. And I said, sorry, I'm in Arizona, but I'll catch up with you guys when I get home. Because I have the Mormon missionaries over to my house all the time. And I study with them. And I ask them questions. And they usually last about 2 or 3 months. And then pretty soon they're so rattled, they don't come back anymore. Or they'll come back with things that I told them that they tell their bishop. And their bishop says, you stay out of that house. What kind of person is he? Well, he's a Seventh-day Adventist. Definitely, you don't go back there again. Because he's going to tell you something we don't want you to know. And that's exactly the truth. Because I know stuff most Mormons don't know. And this comes straight from the quorum. That's their highest echelon in the Mormon church. You know, like the cardinals are the highest in the Catholic Church. The quorum is their answer to the cardinals. And I've got stuff I've watched on YouTube. It's amazing. I just start asking them questions. I don't accuse them of anything. I said, is it true that this? And they go, nobody's ever asked us that before. And I said, well, nobody's probably done their homework. See, my brother was Mormon. And so we had a lot of discussions. I was trying to educate him out of that. And he held on pretty strong. But when it got toward the end and it was time to meet his maker, he changed his heart. He accepted Christ, which I was very grateful for. Yes. So I talk to everybody. Why? Because I'm converted. And this is what a converted person does. Yes. So don't hide behind you're not convicted. Because the real issue is you may not be converted. I can't believe it's almost 8:30. Our time is up. Wow. Because we got to get to bed. And he's my driver. So I'll tell you one mission story in closing. When I was in Russia, that first time, remember the Palace of Soldiers and stuff like that? There was a Russian athlete named Kirill. And he would sit up in the balcony and watch me. And he came up to me and he said, Paul, I like you come to my school. I'm runner, athlete, when I was in high school. You come and you run with me? And I said, well, Kirill, I'm not a fast runner, but I'm a steady runner. I run steady. And he said, good, so you can come with me. And I said, yeah, sure. And I said, do you have a car? And he said, yes, because not many Russians have a car. You've got to be quite wealthy to have a car. And he said, yes. I said, oh, good. I said, could you take me to the markets? Do you know where they're at? Oh, Paul, I love to. Yes, you be my guest, you know. So he would take me around to different places and we would be talking and he'd be asking me questions. And then the day came when he was going to pick me up to go running. So I told the other Americans, I said, I'm going to be gone for a couple of hours because I'm going to be running with a Russian athlete. And they said, who's that? They said, Kirill. Oh, the big tall guy? And I said, yeah. And they said, oh, how are you able to talk to him? He doesn't speak English. I said, he speaks English to me. They said, no, we tried to talk to him. He can't think of what to say. I said, no, he talks all the time with me. And so when Khalil got there, I said, come over here, Khalil. And the Americans were there. And I said, they don't think you can speak English. He said, I can't speak English with them. And I said, why not? He said, I don't know. When I'm with you, I can speak English. I said, Khalil, that's the gift of tongues. He said, what? I said, yeah, it's the gift of tongues. God knew you needed to connect with me, and so he gave you the ability to speak with me. And he said, oh, I like this gift. Yeah, I cannot talk to them. I cannot understand them. Everything you say, I understand. And I know how to talk to you. And I said, oh, that's great. So anyway, we went to his high school, and we started running around the track. And after about 20 or 30 minutes, I could see he was slowing down. Because usually I run an hour nonstop. That's my normal. I either swim an hour nonstop or I run. And I'm not tired at the end of the hour. It's just, that's enough. Need to go on and do other things. So anyway, after about a half an hour, I could tell he was slowing down. And so I slowed down a little bit because I didn't want him to feel bad. And then it started getting ridiculous slow. We're almost fast walking. I said, Khalil, I think we've done a good job now. I think we can quit. He was, yes, Paul. Yes, Paul, let's quit. It's good. It's plenty. So he takes me back to the hotel where we're staying, comes into the lobby. He sits down. He says, Paul, he says, I want you to tell me exactly what you eat, when you sleep, what you drink, how much. I said, really? He says, Paul. He said, you almost killed me back there. And I said, well, you did pretty good. He said, Paul, you're twice my age. But that's a testimony to God, isn't it? Yes. And Khalil was absolutely convinced there is something to this when someone twice his age could far outdo him. And you could tell I wasn't tired at the end. I quit 20 minutes early because I didn't want to embarrass my brother. And so it went really wonderful. So those are a lot of wonderful things. But if you're not healthy, you can't give that example to people because they don't see it in you. They said, you look as tired and lazy as me. And so I don't want to be that person. I want to be God's person. Amen? That's what people are looking for. They want to see that because they're going to see you before they hear you. And that's why it's important how you dress. That's how important how you carry yourself, because before you say anything, they've already formed an opinion. And first impression is a lasting impression. That's right. And if they get a bad first impression on you, it's going to take a long time to turn that around. So I want to make sure their first impression is a good one, because I don't want to have to overturn their bad impression that they got because I wasn't giving them a good example. So we need to be living examples, living proof that this message from God works, and you get to stay younger longer. Amen? I'm going to close with this Bible verse, and I did bring some more DVDs tonight and some of those thumb drives. So if anybody is interested in getting the DVDs or the thumb drives, please see me afterwards. In Acts chapter 20, I always close all of my seminars with this one. By the way, I got to talk to all of you guys this morning with God on the 2-week challenge. But in Acts chapter 20, verse 32, I like this closing verse. And now, brethren, I commend you to God and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and to give you the inheritance among those who are saved. My brothers and sisters, I leave you now with this book and in the hands of God. It will build you up, and it will give you the inheritance among those who are saved, so that if I don't see you again, I'll definitely see you up there. Amen. Let's pray. Father in heaven, oh, you're such a good God, and all this wonderful information to bless us, not to be a burden. It's a burden when we don't follow this. So please help us, convict us, give us the desire and the ability to be the men and women you're calling to be in these last days. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. And that's the last one. So next weekend, I will be at Tempe Church. If you have any friends in that area, they're more than